I've been given the privilege, but also the very daunting task of introducing the Honourable Peeni Henare, our own Minister for Whanau Ora, Minister of Defence, as well as Associate Minister of Health, Associate Minister of Housing, and Associate Minister of Tourism. And so, with a list of responsibilities as long and vast and complex as that, how fortunate are we to have him here today with us? Throughout the past 2 days, there's been so many wonderful moments and so many things that will remain with me. We've had words and phrases like miracles in motion, being the change, progression and future opportunity, transforming Aotearoa one step at a time, and last but not least, helping to make the magic happen. And so today, I'm sure we all look forward to hearing more about how, with the government's support, and Minister, by that I really mean long-term sustainable funding, about how we might all continue to weave some magic together. Kia ora.
Kāti kia ora tātou katoa. E te pāpā nāu tō tātou huihuinga I whakarite I te ata nei. Kia pai ai te noho o tēnei kaupapa mai I tōna timatanga, taino atu ki tōna whakatutukitanga. I whakarite hia e koe I tō tātou huihuinga, kia tai pai ai tātou katoa, ki raro I te maru o tō tātou kaihanga, anō hoki kia hāpai ake I tō tātou kaupapa a o tātou mātua tūpuna. Nō reire, mihi atu ana ki a koe, kāti ki a koe e te tuakana e tuari, koutou o te wā kāinga nei, ko whakatau hia mātou o tira tātou, ki roto I tēnei kaupapa. Aha koe I timata I tērā rangi, ka mutu I te rangi nei, engari, ki roto I taua taima, ko koutou tēnā, kua toro nei I te ringa manaaki, I te ringa atawhai ki a tātou katoa e mihi atu ana. Kāti ki a tātou katoa e oku rangatira, e te pāpai e tā māk, koutou o te poari, kua roa rawa e hāpai ana I tēnei kaupapa, I mua, I te mea kua karangahia nei ko Whanau Ora, ko koutou tēnā, e te whaia, e Helen, e mihi atu ana ki a koe, koutou ko tō tīma, kua hāpai nei I te oranga o tō tātou iwi Māori. And it would be remiss of me not to mention Auntie. Fantastic to see you. It's clear that not many people listened to Sir Mark's wise words last night, which was, don't drink too much and be here in the morning. And interestingly enough, as I spoke to many whānau last night, we had a speech prepared, and I think it's fair to say the speech goes like this. It's fantastic to be here amongst each and every one of you. I want to acknowledge, first and foremost, my tuahine Kiritapu Alan. Everywhere I've been, we've been on a roadshow with respect to COVID-19, and everywhere we've gone, everybody has given their love and their prayers to Kiritapu Alan. And the same was last night, and I'm sure the same is again today. So I want to acknowledge her, not only because she's got the fight of her life ahead of her, but also because she's the kind of person that drives the change and the aspiration that we're all looking for. And so I want to acknowledge her. And I'm sure she's highly embarrassed that I've done that. But I also want to say thank you to the whānau in Murihiku who gave me whitebait to take to her. She'll appreciate that, I'm sure. Can I acknowledge, of course, our whānau here today, those who have come from afar and those closer to home. It's fantastic to see so many whānau. Last night was truly a celebration to behold. To be honest with you, I'm not the biggest fan of interpretive dance, but what I saw last night was amazing. what I saw last night was amazing, and I took the opportunity to go and thank our wonderful talent for the work that they did, but also the fashion show. We are a people who are evolving and changing, and last night was another reminder of just how talented we are and where we're going for the future. So thank you to everybody involved with last night. Last night was a fantastic opportunity once again for us to come and celebrate. But we all know that the mahi continues. The mahi doesn't stop there. We'll stop to enjoy ourselves for a brief moment, but we also know that we've got lots of mahi to do. So, I've got a couple of things I want to talk about today. I know you're all waiting for funding announcements, but what I'll do is I'll start by saying thank you. Thank you because I know that the past 13 months have been particularly hard on our whānau. COVID-19 has presented a challenge that has meant that Whanau Ora has had to pivot to look after that challenge. Often that means at the expense of trying to meet the aspirations of our whānau. So I want to acknowledge that for each and every one of you who have worked hard to support our whānau. Right from the time when our Prime Minister announced that we would be going into a lockdown, all the way up to today, and dare I say it, into the future. So a big thank you to each and every one of you. I've had the good opportunity of going around to Waiponamu over the past 4 days, and each and every one of the whānau that I met with were so thankful for the work that Whanau Ora did to support them, their tamariki and their mokopuna. So that's the first thing I want to say, thank you. Secondly, the Prime Minister, lock her in. She is a huge fan of Whanau Ora. Now, it's interesting because when the lockdown happened, a lot of my colleagues didn't talk about Whanau Ora. She talked about it almost every day because she knew the impact that Whanau Ora was having for our people far and wide. So I'm pleased that she got a chance to speak with you the other day, and she'll be coming back. She was extremely disappointed that she couldn't be with us in person. Zoom happens to be the new thing, so she was quite happy to do that. But we need to get her back here to see the good work that you're all doing firsthand. So I look forward to bringing her back in the near future so that she can continue to support our kaupapa of Whanau Ora. Recently, I've been travelling around the country. I have started the vaccine conversation amongst our whānau. Started in South Auckland, went to Te Taitokerau, and over the past 4 days, I've been across to Waiponamu, starting in Whakatū, down to Otautahi, all the way to Murihiku, and yesterday here. And it's been absolutely fantastic, one, to see the whānau resilience that's out there, but two, to be confronted by the challenges that are in front of all of us. And what I mean by that is, my expectation as an Associate Minister for Health is that Whanau Ora will be the key to providing the vaccine and the information to our whānau. What I mean by that is, what we don't want to see is cones set up outside of a marae where whānau drive up, they wind their window down. I'm showing my age, wind your window down. They put their arm out, they get the vaccine and they drive off. That is not Whanau Ora. My expectation is that Whanau Ora and our Māori health providers, which many are one and the same, but will work together to ensure that our whānau are supported before the first vaccine shot, to the second vaccine shot, and beyond. What I mean by that is, if we think it's hard to get our whānau in for the first vaccine, you can imagine how hard it is to come in for the second shot. And Whanau Ora is the key to bring our whānau together. Whanau Ora will make sure that when you walk into a service, you'll hear, kia ora matua, kia ora whaia. This is what we're going to do today. I can tell you that Whanau Ora, at one of the sites in the far north, actually have brought our whānau in, haven't just given the vaccine, but also done a heart check, diabetes check, sitting with our whānau to talk about their challenges with housing, with education, with employment. Whanau Ora is the key that will bring us all together to make sure that our whānau meet their aspirations. And by that, I mean not simply dealing with the emergency in front of us, but making sure we come out of it successful and strong. Whanau Ora can do that. So as I've travelled around the country, I've spoken to many of our kaumātua and kuia. What that means is, for Whanau Ora, our communication must be strong, because our people are looking for answers. And those people to give the answers are in this room today. We need Whanau Ora, we need our Māori health providers to make sure that they can give the information to our whānau to make an informed decision about COVID-19. The government doesn't know our families, you do. So I'm leaning on you and I'm asking you to make sure that in your dealings with our whānau, we can continue to give them the support, but also the information to make sure that they make an informed decision with respect to COVID-19. You're the key to that. Not the 1 o'clock press statement by the Prime Minister or Minister Chris Hipkins. You are. You're with our whānau every day, from the start to the finish of each day, and you will be with them beyond. So I'm asking you, please, if you can, play your part to make sure that our whānau are protected. And what I mean by communications with our whānau, we met with rangatahi in Tāmaki Makaurau, and they said, Matua, we're not going to read what you give us for COVID-19, but if you can do it in a TikTok, that'll be fantastic. It's been a while since I've done a bit of a kani. But that's the kind of innovation that Whanau Ora gives us to make sure we talk to our rangatahi. And then I have my grandmother who had her birthday the other day, 83 years old. She says, son, I don't have internet, I don't have a cell phone, so why are you telling us to go to a web page? I said, actually, you're right, Nan. So we sat down over a kai of crayfish, kina, and we had a conversation that convinced her that what she needs to do with respect to the vaccine will protect her and her whānau. And many of us know in this room that it only takes the matriarch of the whānau to shift things. So she rang her 54 mokopuna, her 13 tamariki, and said, if you don't have the vaccine, you can't come and visit me. That is the strength, but also the size of the challenge in front of all of us. So if I can, beg you once more to reach into your networks, reach into your whānau, to make sure that we push the message of protecting our whakapapa and our whānau. COVID-19 has given us an opportunity not only to sing the merits of Whanau Ora, but to grow. So where does Whanau Ora go from here? Where does Whanau Ora evolve into? How do we make sure that Whanau Ora isn't just a kaupapa that's on the side of a government agenda? We must keep pushing forward. I've heard over the past few days, and in particular last night, as some of our whānau had a few beers and got a bit brave, they came to me and told me, Matua, this is what we need to do. And I said, that's good. Because Whanau Ora can't become stagnant. It can't become the answer to the COVID-19 challenge in front of us. It must grow beyond that. So what I'm asking and what I'll be signalling over the next few weeks and months is, where does Whanau Ora head from here? I've had the good opportunity of meeting with Helen and her team to discuss the health and disability system reform work. Mark and I have sat down on a number of occasions to talk about this. One of those parts of the reform is the Māori Health Authority. What does that look like? Who is it? Is it an ivory tower in Wellington? Or is it going to shift the dial on the health inequities that our people have suffered for far too long? My expectation is that it will be something that not only shifts the dial for our whānau, but is done in a Whanau Ora way. Many of you will know, as we witnessed Whaia Tari on the video here, that Whanau Ora was born out of health. And I expect and I intend to make sure that Whanau Ora will continue in that way. You can take from that comment what you will. What I'm saying to you is there is huge change in the health sector on the horizon, and Whanau Ora must make sure that they are at the forefront of that. Because I've never met a whānau who only deals with one issue at a time. I've met whānau who deal with housing, health, employment, education, opportunities that continue to sail past us, and our whānau haven't had the opportunity or the wherewithal to make sure that they seize that opportunity. So my encouragement to all of the whānau here, whether you work in Murihiku or Whakatū, whether you are in a small community or a large community, whether you're associated or not with a health provider, health is where our whānau need to be. And in order to do that, as we reform the health sector, Whanau Ora must once again lead the way with respect to our oranga and with respect to our well-being. So I'll leave that with each and every one of you as a seed to make sure that as we look to the future, we aren't simply dealing with COVID-19. We are starting to prepare ourselves for what's coming on the horizon. The health and disability sector reform work will be the largest opportunity that Whanau Ora has to evolve and grow into the future. And if we haven't seized that moment, then we haven't failed ourselves, we've failed our whānau. So my encouragement to each and every one of you is in the next 10 days, there will be an announcement about the reform work. My expectation is that you will all be keying into that announcement, and from there we will be able to establish ourselves and continue to push our kaupapa to make sure that Whanau Ora continues into the future. What I can also say is we've tried to grow Whanau Ora across agencies. Some people have said to me, Matua, Whanau Ora is the answer to Oranga Tamariki. They're right. But what I refuse to do is to send our kaimahi, our navigators, and our kaupapa into a system that's broken. Because if we do that, all we will do is wear our people down. So we need to make sure that when there is system reform, like there will be in health, and like there is for Oranga Tamariki, Whanau Ora once again is in a position to support our people. Not just to support them, but to lead the way. So, I understand I've put my hand up for a bit of question and answer, only because my flight has been delayed. So, finally, 2 points. Thank you, and I mean that, from the bottom of my heart, and indeed the Prime Minister's, because Whanau Ora has done more than deliver over the past 13 months. They've smashed it. And I want to say a big thank you to each and every one of you. And secondly, don't become complacent. There are going to be some big changes on the horizon, and we expect that Whanau Ora will be at the forefront of that. Tēnā koutou, looking forward to the questions. No questions? Excellent.
We've got one here, and then we'll shoot over there.
Ka vai.
Kia ora, Minister. I just want to lobby, it's not so much a question, but lay a tono to look after our whakapapas, to look after our smear campaign. I hear they're cutting the funding, and I want to put the tono there, that we support it, we need it, it is vital to our whakapapa.
You're on the money. Not simply highlighted by the fact that our tuahine Kiritapu is going through what she's going through. This has been a long challenge for our whānau. So we've been working on something over the past 5 months, 6 months that we became government after the 2020 election, and you can expect an announcement pretty soon about the way we continue to not only do the smear and check for our whānau, but the follow-up and ongoing work that needs to take place. So, acknowledged.
Kia ora, Te Minita. I like what you've said today. I hope you don't become complacent and you carry out the kōrero that you've just delivered. The other issue is I don't have to have waipiro to tell you what we want. I'm able to do that quite confidently. So thank you for your kōrero I tēnei wā. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Auntie. If there's one thing I know, don't cross Auntie. But you know what was interesting is, as I've been around Tāmaki, Tai Tokero, Te Waipounamu, and I said it earlier about matriarchs in our family. And Auntie is one of those classic examples of, if you want change in a whānau, actually you need to go to Auntie. So I take your point, Auntie. Just as you were all champions for our people, my job is to be a champion for this kaupapa in the halls of Parliament. And we've grown exponentially in the time that I've been the minister, since the time that Whaitari kicked Whanau Ora off within the government. We've got a job to do to make sure that we continue to grow. So the complacency can't be simply felt on the ground or can't be experienced just on the ground. It has to be something that we change right throughout the entire system. So, kia ora, Auntie.
Oh, kia ora, Minister.
Good to see you again.
Hey, look, we know that Whanau Ora is simple in some senses. The disability system is really complex. Kate Grace said this comment really articulately the other day. There is an Indigenous model here that can be used to show the disability systems transformation how to do it. This is the model they should be using. Some of the officials are great, some of the officials need a bullet. Or actually, no, sorry, aroha mai. They need to be supported to think this way because
Positive.
Yeah. So I just ask you to this is a model that is really clearly good to use, and the disability sector needs also to use this model. Kia ora, Minister.
Ka pai. You won't have an argument there. I'm with you 100%. What we've struggled with over the past 4 years in my time as a Minister for Whanau Ora is how do you force that change in a system that is hardwired against our people? And I mean all of our people, not just Māori, but all of our people. There's a system there that works hard to protect itself. If any of you have watched The Matrix, you'll understand what I'm saying. It's a system that protects itself. And that's not a system we need. If we knew that COVID was coming, we'd have done things different. COVID came, and we had to force ourselves to do things differently. If we go back to how we were before COVID, we've failed. We have seriously failed. Because if we go back to what we had 13 or 14 months ago, then we'll see our whānau continue to slide down in all of the statistics that we don't want them to slide down in. So what we need to do is make sure that Whanau Ora is that system that carries our people forward. Here's the challenge we have with Whanau Ora. How do we make it accountable and also run by our people? Whanau Ora isn't a government agency. It can't be. If it becomes a government agency, then I've failed you. Whanau Ora must continue to remain a kaupapa that our whānau continue to hold in their hands. If it becomes a government kaupapa, we've failed. So, what I'm hoping for as we look into the future is I was at a hui recently to talk with Māori whānau about their experiences with cancer. And one whānau member stood up and said, "Matua, why are you stopping me from using rongoa Māori?" And I said, we're not. When my father was struck down with bowel cancer, every day he'd go home after his Pākehā treatment and he would have ha ware ware and ko pio pio. He didn't need the government to tell him to do that. So when it comes to Whanau Ora, Yes, the government's there to support. Yes, I will champion this kaupapa. Yes, we need it for our people. But remember, Whanau Ora belongs in the hands of our people. And if you're expecting some great big ministry with flash letterhead and a big office in Wellington, then I've failed, because that takes it out of the hands of our people. So I expect each and every one of you to go back and water the seed that our people hold, which is Whanau Ora. So yes, I'll do what I can for the system forward, moving forward, but it must remain with our people.
Kia ora, anō. You need to take the budget from health for rongoa, because it's prescriptive. They shouldn't be putting out contracts for rongoa because they can't manage it. And we are limited about how we prescribe. Kia ora.
My expectation is that the Māori Health Authority will be independent and will be able to drive these kaupapa for our people. If we rely on the current health system, once again, I failed you. The Māori Health Authority, and my expectation, is that they will not only drive for the equitable health outcomes of our whānau, but they'll do it independently, not with all of the strings attached to government. But it became clear as the Hauora claim went through the Waitangi Tribunal that regardless of what we do with respect to the reform in the health system, mana motu hake must be everything when it comes to health. My expectation, very shortly when you hear the announcement, is that the Māori Health Authority will continue to do that for our people, so that we can push through rongoa, we can push through mātauranga Māori, we can push through systems of change that will benefit our people moving forward. Ka pai, Auntie.
Kia ora, Minister.
ora.
2 questions. I love what you say about Whanau Ora belongs in the hands of Whanau. The first is around solo parents. Solo parents are penalised at the moment from that notion of what you need in a good life is learning, earning and yearning. They have the yearning to be the best that they can be for their whānau. They are learning to be able to provide for their whānau. But the moment you step past the income support threshold and go into the workforce, your income support level drops, and so you're no longer able to provide to your family. So the notion of welfare reform for our solo parents in particular is still really critical. The second issue is around the concept that came out of the 2018 review, Te Pū Māturo ki te ao. They talked about the sector silo mentality of departments, the institutional racism of the terrorist culture, and yet what we've seen progressively over the last couple of years is how departments have responded to that review is they then appoint navigators within their own department. So we have connectors in MSD, we have navigators in the police force. They're not doing Whanau Ora navigation, they're still just departmental workers.
It is true, we are a victim of our success. Every agency is now talking about navigation. Every agency is now talking about commissioning. And they're failing our people. They really are. They're trying to paint, or in the words of Winston Churchill, put lipstick on a pig. It doesn't work that way. We need to make sure that as we continue to grow Whanau Ora, we actually take back the mana motu hake that these agencies are trying to take. And I can tell you in the work that we're doing is to try and make sure that we protect our kaupapa, because people are taking this kaupapa and trying to put lipstick on a pig, and that does not work. So I'll acknowledge that point. Secondly, when it comes to solo parents, and there are many of our whānau out there who find themselves in this predicament, we can continue to look towards the reform of the income support system, which is vital, and it is important because many of our people rely on it. But what I've always found with Whanau Ora is that aspiration is everything. Being able to shift our whānau away from simply thinking about whether or not income support supports them into a space where they can actually do their own thing is still our priority and our primary objective. So yes, we can continue to make sure that we lift the minimum wage, that we continue to shift reform into the social development system. But if we peg ourselves to the ground by simply focusing on that, then we've missed the opportunity to help our whānau aspire to something greater. I'll give you an example. My first cousin found herself a solo mum, tū tamariki. She would harass me every day, text me, Kazi, the social development's letting me down. Kazi, my case manager's not helping me. Kazi, I can't get an appointment. Kazi, what's going on? I said, Kazi, take a deep breath. We'll continue to support you as a whānau, but let's focus on how you come out of this hole and look towards aspiration. 3 years later, she is now fully qualified as a nurse. And that should still be our primary objective as Whanau Ora, is to make sure we meet the aspiration of our people, not simply navigate them through troubled waters that's given to us by social development, health, or whatever it is. Our job is to navigate them into a better space. So yes, we need more work in that space around income support and social development. It must still be a system that responds to our whānau and our people, but we can't lose sight of our objective, is to have our whānau not reliant on those systems, but looking towards their aspiration. That was what Whanau Ora was intended for, and the framework that we use for successful Whanau Ora is still the same. It's the same framework that Whaiatari gave us. They asked me to review it and change it. And I said, no, because it works. It's the right system. So if we start going back into a negative focus about why our people aren't getting this or that, then we've lost sight of what we're trying to achieve.
Our last question. Kia ora Minister, ko Kate Grace toka wingawa. I speak on behalf of Te Waipounamu whānau of Tangata Whaikaha and Tangata Whaiora. I asked the Minister a similar question when I spoke to her the other day. You've told us that you've got a big job and you are behind us, and kia ora, I thank you for being in our corner. However, how do we bridge the gap? How do we speak and access these officials and get in front of and support you? How do we have your back and how do they hear our voice? And secondly, we know we want to build partnerships with our officials because this change is the first ever in our lifetime, but it will take time. We know Whanau Ora works. We know we have Indigenous knowledge. How can we support you to share that? Kia ora.
You know, one of the things I hear everywhere I go, they go, Tama, we're with you. We support what you're saying. But when we get to talk to our officials at levels slightly below me, and the further you go down, the harder it gets. So I acknowledge that. That is a problem. Because I can stand here and promise you the world, but when you work with our officials, it always is a challenge. And so we need to strip that bureaucracy down to make sure that our whānau do actually get what they need. More importantly, that they're heard. So I'll take that advice. I don't think it was a question, it was more a bit of advice. Because you're right, and I accept that challenge, because it doesn't just happen in Whanau Ora. As Associate Minister for Housing and Health, it happens there. As Associate Minister for Tourism, it happens there. To picking up Kiritapu's portfolio as Associate Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage, it happens there. So I acknowledge that, and we need to do more, which is why actually coming out of the beehive and coming to hui like this continues to grow that momentum so that our officials recognise that we're here as a fronting to our people. If we hide in our office in Wellington, then we've failed. So I look forward to coming back here in 4 weeks' time. I'm here for 4 days. Come and see me.
Kia ora, Peeni.
Oh, no questions from you, bro.
Good to see you again. The other day I asked Jacinda if she could assure us that going forward, the navigator approach wouldn't be diluted.
Can you say that again, bro? Sorry?
That the other day I asked Jacinda, or I asked Jacinda for her assurance that the current Whanau Ora navigator approach is not diluted when government departments pick up the fact that Whanau Ora navigators are as successful as what they have and that they want to employ Whanau Ora navigators. Over the last couple of days I had a bit of a think and I thought, actually, government departments need Whanau Ora navigators, right? But they shouldn't be hired or employed under the auspices of the current Pākehā construct. Pākehā shouldn't be employing them. They should be placed here by whānau. Because when Whanau Ora navigators are employed by the current Whanau Ora agencies, most of those Whanau Ora agencies are Māori agencies that put Whanau Ora navigators in place because they have that Whanau Ora approach. When government departments employ Whanau Ora navigators, they're going to be employed, which is predominantly by Pākehā, and those people that are being employed will fit the Pākehā construct, if you see what I mean. So I feel that it's important that whānau place Whanau Ora navigators into those organisations, and we don't have a token Māori coming on to an interview panel to say, okay, we had Māori there to employ this person. We need Māori there for Māori, for whānau.
Yeah.
Tēnā koe.
Look, you won't get an argument from me there. One of mine and Sir Mark's very good friends, Mr. Ngahi Witomoana, we're pushing a number of housing kaupapa with him. Now, I asked him, how is it that you're able to push so many kaupapa on so many different fronts? How many staff do you have? You must have a ministry of staff. And he says, son, I've got 6 people who work in my office. He said, but what I do is I force government agencies to give me their staff. They pay for them, they resource them, but they do our bidding. That's a very different scenario to what you've just described, where agencies are trying to take over a model that doesn't sit with them. It sits with this whānau and Whanau Ora. So what we should be trying to do is, as we work with agencies, take those people, use their resource to our bidding. That's where I see things going. I went to Te Kaika yesterday. Big shout out to all the whānau from Te Kaika. And, you know, he's lucky he married a Ngāti Hine woman, but as they describe their kaupapa, it's exactly what we're talking about. Take those resources, utilise those people for the benefit of our whānau. Don't let them come in as co-location. Co-location does not work. We've been doing co-location for 40 years, since I was a cadet in the public service. They tried putting all the services under one roof and saying this will solve the problems in the community. It won't. What we need is their people and their resource to do it our way. Te Kaika is a bloody good model to do that. So you'll see me looking towards supporting initiatives that will continue to do that, because I'm reluctant to give our kaupapa to anyone else other than our people. Because if we do that, then I've failed. A couple more questions and then I better get to my flight.
Kia ora. My question's around education. So, our rangatahi, what I see and in my experience, 14 to 16-year-olds, they're being excluded. They're in that gap of there's no other education for them. They're being babysitted by services. They're not getting any experience, any life experience, any skills, any training, and they're on the outer. And this has been happening for years. And I work for Oranga Tamariki, so I see it quite a lot. So I'd like to know what's happening in education for our rangatahi. because I see them wasting away. Kia ora.
Sadly, of the 6 portfolios I hold, none of them are in education. However, there are lots of things going on with respect to how we're trying to change that system. You know, one of the things I've heard everywhere is bring back trade training, Māori trade training, work for our people. Well, yes, our people learned a trade, but the success of Māori trade training wasn't the trade. The success was how they cared for our young people when they went to those hostels to learn the trade. That's the success of the kaupapa. I met with the Ngāpuhi Runanga recently for my sins. If you're Ngāpuhi, you know what I'm talking about. And they said to me, Peeni, we want to do more scholarships for our young people. I said, forget that. Buy properties near the universities, near the institutions, and look after them. Because study is easy. Living is hard. And so that's what I expect from our tribes, from our people. Don't give out scholarships anymore. Yes, they're helpful, but support our people to live, because then education opportunities become easier. So with that advice, the Runanga opened up the scholarship round. But I know the likes of Ngaitahu and others are looking towards how they change that system. Scholarships are important. Pipelines into education are important. But looking after our people should be number one. Because once you do that, our people will thrive. We know that. So wherever there's an opportunity where we can support our tamariki into the hostels and places like that to look after them, that's where it's at. Not the $1,000 that Ngāpuhi gave me to do a $40,000 degree, you know? With all due respect to Ngāpuhi. Final question.
Last question here.
Kia ora, Minister, ko te aroha hau. He pātai tāku e pāna ki te mātauranga, so a question about Māori and learning. So, as a school teacher, I've resigned from that industry because it is so stressful and it's a framework that does not work for our people. I've worked in early childcare and I've worked in primary sector as well. And one of the things I notice is our boys, our men, our males are minimised in their masculinity on a daily basis by female teachers, and it's not a conscious choice to do that. It's actually facilitated by the education system. And one of the aspirations I always wanted to see for the boys was actually a place to go to between 3 and 6 in the day where they could be guys with guys, right, where they could do their studies, where they could play darts, play pool, have a sleep, have a shower, not be sexualised, not have teenage pregnancies, not access the alcohol cupboard while their parents are at work, because the reality is parents have to work. They can't be home with their children and provide for their whānau at the same time. So it's housing and education in one. I would love to see some housing around our boys because they're the ones who grow up and have children, and then we end up with solo parents. So kia ora. So yeah, not really a question, but he wero pia.
It's a Māori hui when you ask for questions and get statements. I can tell you, you're right. You know, not many people know this, but my Form 2 teacher, so I'm showing my age, Form 2, that's year 8, I think it is, was Calvin Davis. And people go, oh, he signed you up to the bloody Labour Party then, eh? The point is, every teacher I had before him was a female. And they were fantastic, all of them. I felt the love, I felt cared for. But what I needed when I turned 12 and 13 was Calvin Davis. Calvin taught me how to drive, even before you could get a license. He had an old Ford Laser and he used to take me driving, taught me how to drive a manual. It's that kind of mentorship that I know our people need. The question is, how do we facilitate that? And I think the government should be doing that. And I think we should look towards opportunities that do that in a very intimate setting. Not something that says, haere mai te katoa, but actually something that says someone like myself or any other tāne out there who's prepared to be a mentor for our people, literally just sit one-on-one with our whānau. Because if we provide a space where we're inundated, it's like trying to stand up against a wave. It doesn't work. Our people get burned out, and we don't want that. So calling out to all good males in this room, we do need more mentorship programs. We need you to lift your head out of the work that you do into ensuring that succession planning for our people is a #1 priority. I'll tell you a little story. When Te Atairangi Kahu passed away, my father was in the room to discuss who would become the next head of Te Kingitanga, and I happened to be there with him. I was by far the youngest person in the room. Every hui I went to with my father, I was the youngest person there. Every hui. Why don't we take our young men and women to these hui? We show up with ourselves and our kaupapa. What happened? My father died at the age of 62 unexpectedly, 6 years ago. Nothing. A void. He was fortunate, I was fortunate, that he had a vision for succession planning. That's what mentorship is, succession planning. Not signing people up for the Labour Party like Calvin did, but literally holding their hand so that they can become better people. Because my time as Minister for Whanau Ora isn't going to be forever. It's not. Let's focus on who else is going to come through to do that. Who else is going to come through to carry our kaupapa forward, whether it's in Parliament or in our community. So to all of our whānau out there, please have a succession plan. Don't all rely on Nanny and Papa. We need you to actually get alongside them and take these 3 pieces of advice that my father gave you, and I'll finish on this. 1, shut your mouth. 2, open your ears. 3, dress appropriately. That was his advice to me, and it actually served me pretty well. So on that, whānau, look, thank you for the opportunity to be amongst you. I'm down here, like I said, in the very near future. I look forward to coming around and being with each and every one of you. Finally, can I say, if you're too whakamā to ask a question, or you think of a question after this, ehua, message me. We're supposed to be the most connected world ever. So message me directly on social media, email, through my office. My colleague Ingrid Leary is here as a local MP. Go through her if that's what helps. But message me. Come directly to me and you'll hear from me. E kara e tā mā koutou o te wā kāinga nei, whai Molly. Trevor, koutou. Tēnā koutou, me ngā manaakitanga o te atua ki runga i a koutou katoa. We've got a battle in front of us. And I look forward to doing it with you. Kia ora tātou.
Talking about dressing appropriately, we nearly had a moment where you may not have been dressed so appropriately because I went and grabbed the wrong bag. That had a pair of high heel shoes in it. And Sympoisum, so, you know. But I'm just going to keep this very short. I was in a hui recently where someone was saying, oh my goodness, how do we follow that? And actually, her tāne said to her, he said, you don't try. And what he was meaning was you don't need to try and follow that. So I'm going to take that advice because I can't follow all of the wonderful things that have just been said. So I thought I would steal from someone who is so inspirational when she speaks. And it was the very first thing that I wrote down at the symposium from Helen's speech. And I thought it sums everything up, where she said, whānau is not just an important thing, it is everything. Kei te mihi nui mō whakanui ana, te mana o Māori.